Good morning. My name is Dan Ryan. I'm your host on the Human Capital Connection here on the Social Media Connection Broadcast Network. I'm honored today to have as my guest Mr. Joe Scarlett, the founder of the Scarlett Leadership Institute at Belmont University. Joe, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your motivation for starting the Scarlett Leadership Foundation at Belmont.
Well, when I stepped down from as being the CEO of Tractor Supply Company, I wanted to share with the community, and I partnered with Belmont University to create a leadership institute focused on helping Middle Tennessee executives become better executives. Or as I like to say, our goal is to turn stars into superstars.
So in doing that and giving them different components of leadership, there are many different aspects of leadership. A couple I'd like to have you talk with us about today are setting direction and building teams. So if you're wanting to help a leader learn how to set direction, what would you encourage them to do? How does a leader set good direction?
Well, it's a matter of verbalizing the direction. First, you've got to know where you're going, and if you're part of another company, you may need some help in establishing that, but setting clear direction wherever you are in business is a very important component of leadership. People will follow leaders who know where they're going. So it's simply a matter of making sure you understand the direction and can clearly and thoroughly articulate it with your people so that they know where you're going. I have a story I'd like to share with you. Back when I was early on as a president of Tractor Supply Company, I decided that we should share the vision of the organization with everybody. And we've not really done that in the past in a cohesive way. So I simply assembled all that I knew about what our direction was in operations and marketing and merchandising, logistics and IT, and I cobbled that together and delivered this speech to the whole organization, and I delivered it repeatedly. And the only thing new in that speech was that our goal was to double the size of the company in the next 5 years. Well, by delivering that vision, everybody seemed to get on board. Everybody wanted to help everybody else. They were all focused on this goal of doubling the size of the company over the next 5 years. And the bottom line is, when it was all said and done, we had much greater teamwork in the organization than we had previously, and we not only doubled the size of the company, we doubled it plus 25%. So I think that gives you a flavor for the power of leaders setting clear direction for their people.
As a leader, what are some of the major stumbling blocks that you've run into in helping to set direction for an organization?
Well, I find that many leaders are sort of reluctant to say, here's the vision for our business, or here's the vision for my department. I think that's just a basic starting point, and I would encourage every leader to say, to understand what the direction is and then just simply talk about it. And the second part is, you've got to be repetitive about setting direction for people. It should be a few key goals and then talk about it over and over again. The experts tell you that a week after you hear something, you're lucky to retain 10%. So repetition is very important. And if the third point would be, is to be consistent in setting direction. You don't want to change from month to month or week to week. We've all heard stories about or worked for bosses who read a new book every month and changed direction every month. That's very confusing for people. So the direction has to be consistent over time. Now, that doesn't mean that you may not have to make some serious changes if things in the marketplace change or your strategies as an organization change. But the less change, the better. The more consistency, the better.
After you've set the direction actually encompasses everyone in the organization, and there's a team that's involved in leading that direction. How would you go about building an effective team?
Well, my view is that the most important decisions we ever make as business leaders are the decisions about the selection of the people we surround ourselves with. Or as I like to say, if you surround yourself with stars, you can be a star. So I would urge everybody, whenever you're making a personnel decision, be it promotion from within or hiring people from outside, devote way more time to it than you plan to. And involve as many people as you can, because the more information you have, the more likely you are to make a good decision. Bad personnel decisions can be expensive, disruptive, can reduce productivity, create morale problems. So you want to do everything you can to make the very best possible decisions. And when you build a great team, you can do fabulous things. A little story I'd like to share with you. When I interviewed people, I would always interview them in a store, in a Tractor Supply store, and I'd walk up and down the aisles with them, and I would be able to ask much better questions there than I would behind a desk. And by being in a store, you could look up at the merchandise and you could understand how people think about the strategies of the business. You talk to them about the systems and how you run things. And very importantly, you see how the candidate interacts with customers and interacts with employees. I found that wherever you can interview on the work floor, wherever that is, you tend to ask better questions and I think make better decisions.
I'm sure that there are times when the team maybe needs to be fixed or needs to be repaired. How can you tell when a team needs to be repaired, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, the general rule of thumb is if you see morale problems, if you see people not smiling, if you're not hitting your numbers, I mean, there's usually something wrong. And that's the time that we as leaders need to just roll up our sleeves and go out and talk to the frontline people. Just get there and ask some questions. Listen to people. They'll tell you what the problems are, and when you really understand what the problems are, we can go about fixing them and go about repairing whatever's not right. One rule of caution, though, when you're talking to frontline people, you don't want to argue with them or disagree with them. That's what I call shooting the messenger. If you shoot the messenger, you're not going to get any more input. So when somebody tells you something, whether you like it or not, your response should be, thank you, I appreciate your input. And when you tally all that information together, you're going to be able to know exactly what is not running right and be able to repair it.
So you've set the direction, you've built the team, but there's always going to be something new to learn, something else that the organization needs to know. What are some resources or books that you would recommend to leaders who want to become better leaders?
Well, the number one book in business of the past 10 years or so is Good to Great by Jim Collins. I would urge everybody to read that maybe more than once. Second, books on leadership are wonderful, and there are hundreds of them in libraries and bookstores. Just find one that makes sense for you, that you like. The principles of leadership are pretty much the same, no matter whose book you're reading, and then try to read a leadership book or two every single year. Another thing that I think is very important is networking. Network with people, your peers inside your company, your peers at your competitors, join trade organizations. When you're talking with your peers, you can benchmark yourself, you can learn from others, and often you can get advice that can be very helpful.
Great information, Joe. I really appreciate your advice. I really appreciate you being on the show here with us this morning. Again, it's Dan Ryan here with the Human Capital Connection on the Social Media Connection Broadcast Network. Thank you for joining us.